The morning after their graduation thesis defense, John ended it. They were at their usual table in the university cafe. The same spot they'd sat at for every milestone: orientation, finals, internship offers, birthdays. This time was supposed to be a celebration, one last quiet breakfast before the next chapter. Instead, John set down his coffee with a calm finality. "We're done." Sophia barely looked up from her phone. "Done with what?" "You and me," he said. She blinked, then tilted her head. "Just because I helped Ryan with his resume and not you?" John didn't repeat himself. Sophia let out a half laugh. "You're unbelievable. Come on, John, he needed help. His grammar's a disaster and you know it." "I didn't ask you for help," John said. "I'd already submitted mine." "Then what's the problem?" she challenged, putting her phone down at last. "You're being dramatic. You'll cool off, like you always do." "No," he said simply. Her smile faded slightly. "Don't do this, John. Don't make something small into something massive." "You helped him again," John said, "just like last time. You stayed up with him all week, skipped our anniversary dinner, skipped my presentation rehearsal. You were online editing his cover letter while I was waiting outside your building. You didn't even pick up when I called." "He was nervous," she said. "You know Ryan's not like you. He comes from nothing. He doesn't have connections. He just wanted a fair shot. And he gets it," John nodded, "because he has you." Sophia crossed her arms. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying he always has you, Sophia. Even when I need you, he gets you first." There was a heavy silence between them. Then she laughed again, this time colder. "You're petty, you're acting jealous." "I'm done acting," John said. She leaned back in her chair, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear, like this was just another one of his episodes. "All right, be mad, go sulk, go cool off, text me when you're done being moody." He stood. "I won't." "You always do." "No," he said. "This time, I'm really leaving." She rolled her eyes. "Where are you going then?" But he didn't answer. He didn't need to. Sophia watched him walk away without a backward glance. No apology, no explanation, just silence. She didn't follow him. She didn't believe him. Because John always came back. 18 years, since childhood. They had grown up together, shared every heartbreak, every holiday, every secret. He couldn't possibly mean it. She thought it was just another fight, another one of his emotional storms that would pass by morning. What she didn't know was that John had already accepted a job, not in the city she arranged, not in the firm she recommended, a different city, one with no ties to her, one she'd never even visited. He had already packed, already booked the ticket, already signed the lease. He left that night, blocked her number, changed his SIM card, deleted their photos. And for the first time in 18 years, he didn't check if she was okay. Sophia didn't notice. Not immediately. She laughed with Ryan that weekend, helped him run mock interviews, took him to the same cafe, sat in the same seat. When the barista asked, "Where's your boyfriend?" she said, "Probably sulking somewhere dramatic." She didn't even know he'd gone, didn't even realize she was talking about a ghost, but soon the silence would grow too loud. Soon, her messages would stop delivering. Soon, someone would mention a job in a city she'd never heard him apply for. And then, for the first time in her life, Sophia would learn what it meant to lose something without warning. No closure, no scream, just absence. John had always been the quiet one. After the accident, when he was just 5, he didn't speak for almost a year. His parents were killed on the way back from his birthday picnic. He remembered the cake box in his lap, the sound of tires screeching, the broken glass, and then, nothing. The Liu family had taken him in soon after. They were close family friends, and Sophia's mother had been especially fond of John's late mother. Sophia was 5 too. She didn't understand what grief was, but she understood what sadness looked like. She followed John around like a shadow from the day he moved in. She talked enough for the both of them. She brought him juice boxes and coloring books. She'd sit beside him at night when he couldn't sleep and promise to keep the monsters away. Eventually, John began to speak again, to laugh. He started calling Sophia's parents uncle and auntie, and somewhere along the way, Sophia stopped being just the girl next door. She became his anchor. The one who'd seen him through the dark and brought him back to light. He never called her his savior, but he never forgot. They moved towards enter the same elementary school, same middle school, same high school, always in the same class, always seated close. Sophia was loud, bright, competitive. John was quiet, observant, steady. Where she soared through competitions and dance recitals, John won science fairs and math leagues. She was chaos, he was calm. When they got into the same university, it felt like destiny. They moved in together in second year, her parents approved, his uncle nodded in silent support, everyone thought they were perfect, and for a while, they were, but then came Ryan. Ryan was the driver's son. He moved in after his father had a back injury, needing somewhere cheap to stay during grad school. Sophia's parents had offered the guest room in exchange for light housework. He was polite, soft-spoken, and awkwardly grateful. He barely spoke at first. Then he started asking Sophia for help with university forms, then papers, then presentations. Then he started showing up even when he wasn't invited. John didn't say much about it at first. Ryan was no threat. He had no confidence, no background, no money, but he always looked at Sophia like she was a star fallen to earth, and Sophia, she liked the attention. "It's just help," she said one evening as she typed corrections into Ryan's midterm draft. "Don't be insecure." "I'm not," John said, "but we haven't eaten dinner together in 3 days." Sophia didn't look up. "You could have asked." "I did," he replied. "You said you were tired, but then I saw your location on Ryan's street." She had paused briefly, then said, "He had a family emergency. I was just dropping off something." John didn't argue. He never did. Instead, he started staying later at the library, volunteering for group work he didn't need, helping professors with grading, filling the spaces Sophia used to take up. That was when Deborah began to notice. She was in the same graduate research lab as John, always seated 2 rows behind. Deborah was one of those people who never said much but always noticed everything. She had soft brown eyes behind round glasses and always carried 2 pens, one black, one blue. One day, she quietly slid a thermos over to John when she saw him skipping lunch again. "You'll burn out," she said softly. "It's just miso soup." John had blinked. "Thanks." Deborah never pressed, never asked about Sophia, but she saw the way John looked at his phone every 5 minutes, the way his jaw clenched when Ryan's name popped up on Sophia's screen during meetings. She saw the dark circles deepen, the smiles thin out, the silences grow longer. Everyone else thought John and Sophia were perfect. Deborah knew better. "Why don't you just talk to her?" she asked once, gently. John had looked at her like someone who'd already tried, and failed. Because Sophia never listened. Not really. She was used to John folding. Every fight ended the same way. He'd leave, she'd text, he'd return. She never said sorry. She didn't have to. All she had to do was pout, maybe cry a little, and John would come home. Because John was loyal, because he owed her his life. At least, that's what Sophia believed. But what she never noticed was that Ryan had become a pattern. He wasn't just a friend, he was a habit, one that Sophia didn't want to break. She always defended him, always softened when he appeared, always acted like John was being dramatic. "You're not jealous of Ryan, are you?" she once teased, flipping through a binder of his mock interview notes. "Come on, you're my boyfriend, he's just helpless. That's the problem, Jay." Owen had muttered. "He's always helpless, and you always run." Sophia had chuckled. "What, you want me to ignore someone who needs help?" "No," he said, "but I want you to stop ignoring me." She hadn't responded, because deep down, she didn't think he'd ever leave. John was steady, predictable, forgiving. Sophia had always been the sun in their orbit. John just revolved around her. She was the voice, the energy, the light. He was the weight that kept them from floating away. But Deborah saw it. The way John's silence began to feel less like retreat and more like withdrawal, like he was collecting his strength. She didn't say anything, but she did something else. When the job fair came around in final semester, Deborah handed John a pamphlet for an elite securities firm located across the country. "You'd fit in here," she said. He looked down at the brochure. "I thought you were applying here." "I am," she smiled faintly. "But they have 2 openings." John took the pamphlet. For the first time in weeks, his hands didn't tremble. That night, Sophia was out again. Helping Ryan prep, she texted. John didn't reply. He applied instead. 2 interviews later, an offer letter came. One-way ticket included. He didn't tell Sophia. He didn't tell anyone, except Deborah. I'm leaving, he told her, 3 days before graduation. Deborah simply nodded. I know. He smiled. You always do. That morning, when Sophia said, you'll come back, you always do, she had no idea that Deborah had already booked him a cab to the airport. No idea that his lease was signed, that his number would be changed. She just assumed he'd fall back into orbit. But John had already left the galaxy. At first, John told himself it was temporary. Ryan had just transferred into their department midway through the semester. He needed help catching up. Sophia was always generous, always eager to help someone struggling. She did the same for others before. But Ryan wasn't like the others. He lingered. What started as Sophia proofreading Ryan's essay became her rewriting entire paragraphs. Then she began meeting him after classes, just to walk him through the logic. She skipped dinner with John twice that week. It's just a one-off, she said when John pointed it out. But it wasn't. By mid-semester, Ryan had become a fixture in their lives. He joined their group study sessions. He sat beside Sophia in the library. He texted her memes and jokes and questions at 2 a.m. and she replied to every single one of them, laughing, defending, prioritizing. John didn't want to seem possessive. He wasn't the jealous type. He didn't want to be. But every time he looked up, Ryan was there. When he brought Sophia coffee before class, Ryan had already brought her one, with oat milk, her favorite. When he planned a quiet night at home, Sophia had already promised to help Ryan rehearse his presentation. When he scheduled a dinner to celebrate her internship offer, she forgot. She had driven across town to help Ryan set up his slides. John bit his tongue, again and again. He didn't want to seem insecure, but the facts were harder to ignore. When Ryan sprained his ankle, Sophia left John's apartment mid-dinner and rushed to the hospital. She spent the night there. She slept on the visitor chair. She didn't tell John until the next morning. You're acting like he's some stranger, she said, when John confronted her. He's like family now. John nodded slowly. I know. But inside, something tightened. She had never even spent a night beside him when he broke his wrist last year. She had texted instead, I'll call you when I get out of class. He had sat in the ER alone for 5 hours. Still, John held on. He tried harder. He brought her flowers on random Wednesdays. He asked her to come to the museum exhibit she once said she loved. She said she had to help Ryan organize files. He's behind again, she said. So John went alone. Even at their anniversary dinner, year 5 since they started dating, Ryan texted halfway through the meal. Sophia picked up. John stared across the table at her as she laughed into the phone. Of course I can help, send it to me. She hung up like nothing had happened. Sorry, Ryan's project's due tomorrow. John set his fork down. We planned this 2 weeks ago. I know, she said with a shrug. But this matters to him. And I don't? He asked finally. She blinked as if startled, then frowned. Don't twist this, you know I care about you. He didn't answer, because caring had started to feel like a word she threw around to end arguments. Not something he felt anymore. He started spending more time with Deborah in the lab. They never spoke about Sophia, but Deborah noticed his silences were heavier now. You okay? She asked one late evening, as they organized research folders. John gave a tired smile. Define okay. Deborah didn't push. One Thursday afternoon, John felt a strange tightness in his chest after eating lunch at the campus canteen. At first, he thought it was stress. But then his breathing got shallow, his throat closed, he collapsed near the engineering wing. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was fading in and out of consciousness. At the hospital, they confirmed a severe allergic reaction, possibly peanuts in the food. John had always been careful, but that day, one mistake nearly cost him his life. He remembered asking for Sophia. The nurse said she hadn't answered the phone. He called again when he was stable. No answer. Later that night, she texted. Sorry, I was helping Ryan rehearse for his thesis defense. He was panicking. No apology. No, "Are you okay?" Just that. John stared at the text for a long time. The beeping of machines was the only sound in his hospital room. The air smelled of antiseptic and cold linens. The IV in his arm ached. And that's when it hit him. Sophia had become someone he couldn't rely on. Not in crisis, not in joy, not in grief. She had become someone who only appeared when Ryan didn't need her. He could no longer remember the last time she chose him first. That night, he lay there in silence, staring at the ceiling. He didn't cry, he didn't curse, he didn't tell anyone. He just made a quiet decision. No more warnings, no more arguments, no more waiting. He would leave. He would not fight. He would not text again. No goodbyes, no paragraphs, no explanations. Just absence. He would let her feel what it meant to look around and find nothing. To search and discover silence, to reach and touch air. He pressed his phone's power button and shut it off. Outside, the city moved on without him. Inside, something in him finally stopped hoping. John left without a sound. No bags in the hallway, no long speech, no trace of anger, only a neatly folded key on Sophia's desk and a message to the landlord that the lease would be his alone by the end of the month. He boarded a train with one duffel bag and a folder full of signed documents, job offer, new housing, transfer papers, fresh ID number, new number. The city skyline faded behind tinted windows, and John didn't look back. Hence. He didn't owe her a goodbye, not anymore. He turned off his phone before it left the tower range, and when he turned it back on 3 days later in the new city, it had a new SIM, new number, new voicemail. The first thing he did after arriving was unpack his clothes, hang 3 suits in the tiny white wardrobe of his furnished studio, and set a framed photo of his parents by the bedside. The second thing he did was open his laptop. He didn't search Sophia's name. Not at first. He focused on work. The new company was smaller but tighter, filled with quiet professionals who kept to themselves and delivered without drama. John fit right in. He handled portfolios, built custom models. Stayed late because he wanted to, not because he was hiding. He cooked dinner at night, walked to work, drank real coffee in silence. It was peaceful. And yet, late at night, sometimes, he'd open his browser and type her name. Not out of longing, out of curiosity. Sophia was still active online, her updates didn't slow. Her photos with Ryan multiplied. She still posted those pastel-filtered cafe shots and laughing selfies. She still captioned everything with lines like, "Nothing beats real friendship, and some people always show up." He scrolled past them, not slowly, not bitterly, just with quiet detachment. She didn't post about the breakup, not directly. Sophia never liked admitting fault, but now and then, there were cryptic lines, "I wish people stayed," or, "What's meant for you shouldn't vanish without warning." John would close the tab. She was still in the city. Still going to the same brunch spots. Still hanging around Ryan, even closer now. In one picture, Ryan had his arm around her shoulder. The comments flooded in. "You two should just date already." And "Cutest duo." John didn't react. He hadn't reacted in weeks. Until one night, Sophia posted something different. It was just a blank story slide, no image, just white text on black. "I keep refreshing the chat like it'll bring you back." John froze. For the first time in months, something cracked open, not pain, not anger, just memory. Of being 5, sitting on a bed in a stranger's house, and Sophia slipping a toy car into his hand and whispering, "You're not alone anymore." But that was a long time ago. Now she was the one alone, and he was finally whole. Back in her city, Sophia started to unravel. At first, she didn't notice his silence. She assumed he was sulking. She gave him space. She even told Deborah once, laughing, "He's probably writing one of his long monologues to send later. John always comes back with paragraphs." But the paragraph never came. His messages stopped delivering. His social media went dark. His email bounced back. Sophia waited. She asked Deborah, but Deborah had only shrugged. "He mentioned moving," she said. "To where?" He didn't say. Sophia had scoffed. "He's being dramatic." But inside, a chill spread. Weeks passed, then months. She started checking the train stations, looked through his friends' lists, checked company directories for his name. Nothing. She even asked Ryan once, offhand. "You think John's okay?" Ryan had looked at her a bit too long. "You didn't check on him when he was in the hospital. Why now?" She hadn't answered. Because she hadn't known. John hadn't told her. He hadn't needed to. And suddenly, she understood, she wasn't part of his emergencies anymore. She wasn't even part of his life. The realization came slowly. First, she stopped sleeping as easily, then she stopped answering Ryan's texts so fast. Then she started opening old messages, ones from John. The ones she used to skim through and dismiss. She read them now like they were scripture. "I just want to feel like I matter too. I miss us. Please tell me you'll be there this time." And then, silence. A clean, intentional ending. She typed messages, long ones, apologies she had never said out loud. "I should have been there. You didn't deserve that. I was stupid, I know that now." She deleted all of them before sending. Because there was nowhere to send them to. John had vanished with more finality than she thought he was capable of. He wasn't angry. He was gone. And that, Sophia realized, was worse. One night, she opened a blank message draft, and just wrote, "Please." But even that didn't deliver. The tiny gray circle remained, unsent, unseen. Regret is a strange thing, it doesn't scream, it drips, into every silence, every habit, every hour. Sophia still laughed in pictures, still held Ryan's arm in posed group shots. But when she got home, she scrolled through old photos, she zoomed into John's face, his quiet eyes, his half smiles, his presence that used to feel like air. She didn't tell anyone she was crying now, and no one asked. Because to them, she looked fine. Only John would have known the difference. But he was somewhere else, living, breathing, healing. Without her. The discovery wasn't dramatic. It happened on a slow Tuesday, in the middle of rain, with Sophia wiping fog off her windows while cleaning her bookshelf. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just trying to declutter, maybe erase reminders of someone she no longer had access to. But when she reached the back of the middle shelf, her fingers brushed something cool and familiar. A pen. Not just any pen, his pen. The one John had given her 2 years ago, engraved with small silver lettering, "Write like the world needs your story." At the time, she had smiled, said thank you, and placed it neatly in a drawer. She hadn't used it often, it was too precious, too sentimental, and, in her mind, always there, just like him. But now, she held it with trembling fingers. Something about it felt unfinished. Curious, she twisted the top. Click. Nothing. She shook it gently, still nothing. Then she noticed a tiny line, a faint seam at the top of the barrel. She turned it slowly, screw-threaded, and inside, a tightly folded piece of thin parchment paper. Her heart stuttered. She unfolded it with care. The ink was faint, but unmistakably his handwriting. Compact, controlled. The words bled more emotion than he ever let out aloud. "Sophia, if I ever leave, and don't tell you why, it's because I've run out of ways to make you choose me without asking you to stop being you. I've loved you since I was 6. When your parents took me in. When you gave me half your lunch because I didn't know how to ask. When you covered for me in school, when you whispered jokes in the back of every lecture. You became my gravity, and I was willing to orbit around you forever. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being seen. I became the one you assumed would always be there, a placeholder, a guarantee. I never wanted you to stop helping people, I just wanted, once, for you to look back and see I was bleeding too. You didn't. I applied to that job in New Haven, not the one you sent me, not the one you arranged through your uncle's firm. I couldn't take a future handed to me by someone who didn't see me enough to ask where I truly wanted to be. This pen is yours. But the promises inside it were mine alone. And maybe someday, you'll find them. Maybe not. But if you do, know this, I loved you fully. Even when you were half with someone else. John, her vision blurred, the pen slipped from her fingers and landed softly on the carpet. The silence around her was deafening. She hadn't known, she truly hadn't. She thought he took the job her family helped line up, the one in her city, the safe one. She thought he just needed space, that he'd return once he cooled off. She didn't know he had rejected everything tied to her. Even the future she thought she was building for both of them. She sank to the floor. The weight of the paper crushed her chest more than any shouting match could have. He had planned to stay. Planned to propose. Planned a life that she never paused long enough to ask about. Sophia replayed everything now, not with ego, not with pride, but with clarity. How he sat across from her in silence as she giggled through Ryan's texts. How he waited outside her door with soup the night she had the flu, but she cancelled because Ryan had a panic attack. How he once asked her, "Do you think you'd still care if I vanished?" She had laughed. "Don't be dramatic." But he wasn't. He was done. And she never even noticed. Her phone buzzed. A tag on a post. A group photo from someone's reunion, Ryan, Deborah, a few old classmates, but not John. John wasn't in any of them anymore. He had ghosted the entire past because his new life didn't need explaining. And hers couldn't catch up. That night, she opened her drawer, pulled out his old notebooks, the ones she had mocked for being too detailed. Inside were lists, birthday ideas for her, secret notes on her favorite foods, sketches of rings. She hadn't known, because she hadn't asked. She had just assumed that he'd always orbit her. But stars burn out too. And now she was the one circling memories, trying to rewrite a script she never read when it mattered. She finally saw it. She was the only one still living in the past. It took Sophia 4 months to track him down. She started with his alumni network, then the publishing database from his last research paper. She followed breadcrumbs, an archived LinkedIn post from a design team in Portland, a conference listing with his name halfway down the panelist list, and finally, a blurry photo on a niche tech magazine's blog. The caption said, "John E., lead strategist, Polaris Innovations." New name, new address, but not unreachable. She booked a flight the next morning, no plan, no script, just the engraved pen in her coat pocket and fingers that hadn't stopped trembling since she unfolded the letter. It was raining when she landed. She hadn't packed an umbrella. She didn't care. The front desk at Polaris looked like something out of a dream. Glass, steel, silence, clean. Not like their old campus labs. Not like the cluttered apartments they used to share, where her paint palette spilled onto his keyboard and her shoes lined the hallway. The receptionist smiled. "Do you have an appointment?" Sophia swallowed. "Tell him. It's Sophia." A pause. Then a quoo, eat nod. "He'll be down in 5 minutes. She waited, eyes fixed on the elevator. When the door slid open, John stepped out exactly as she remembered, but different. Sharper. Still. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, sleeves rolled neatly once, his hair was longer, swept back, his eyes, darker now, not tired, not angry, just calm. Her knees nearly gave out. "Hi," she whispered. He nodded politely. "Hi." She tried to smile, failed. I found the pen," she said, voice barely holding. "And the letter." He didn't flinch. "I didn't know," she continued, throat tight. "I didn't know how much you were carrying." John offered a small, kind smile, not warm, not cold, just distant. "I know," he said. She blinked. "I thought I was helping you, guiding you. I never meant to." "I know," he said again, gently. "But I was wrong," she rushed on, words spilling now. "I was blind, John. I kept choosing Ryan, and I didn't even realize it. I let you drown beside me thinking you were fine. I didn't mean to make you feel like nothing." "You didn't make me feel like nothing," he said quietly. "You just never noticed I already did." She covered her mouth. Tears welled. "Please. Let me make it right." He didn't respond. She stepped closer, shaky. "I'll leave everything. Ryan, the city, my job. I'll come with you. Anywhere. Just, please let me start over. The silence was infinite. Outside the glass wall, the rain blurred traffic lights into colors. Inside, only his voice mattered. I'm leaving, John said. Sophia froze. Leaving? He nodded. I got a transfer. Geneva, 6 months, maybe more. Her face fell. But I just got here. He looked at her, not with cruelty, not with satisfaction, but with the kind of clarity only grief could sculpt. That's the thing, Sophia, you always get here, late. She stepped back, trembling. I'm trying. I'm here now. He breathed in slowly. I know, and I'm proud of you for it, but I'm not here anymore. She bit her lip to hold the sob back. I loved you, he said softly. For almost 2 decades, you were my beginning, my middle. He paused. But you're not my end. Sophia shook her head. I can change. You shouldn't have to, he said gently, and I shouldn't have to beg to be seen. She lowered her eyes. You told me once I was dramatic, he continued, that I always came back. I was wrong, she whispered. He nodded. Yeah, but I believed you, every time. John stepped forward and placed something in her hand. A folded paper napkin, the same kind they used to scribble poems on in cafes. On it, just one line in his handwriting. Some doors are locked not to punish you, but to protect what's behind them. Sophia stared at it. He didn't wait. He stepped past her and walked toward the elevators. She turned. John, she choked out. He looked back, once, but didn't speak. And then the doors closed. Sophia sank to the cafe floor just outside the lobby. She didn't cry loudly. She folded her arms across her knees and buried her face, not from shame, but from finality. He hadn't yelled, he hadn't been punished. He hadn't even been cold. He was just done. The kind of done that comes after years of being patient with someone who never learned to look back. And now, as she sat surrounded by strangers, rain hitting the glass behind her, she realized something terrifying. John hadn't walked away because of hate. He had walked away out of peace, and that's the kind of goodbye that never comes back. 3 months passed, each slower than the one before. Sophia stayed in the city, moved apartments, deleted social media, told herself she was focusing on growth, on introspection, but even she knew that was a lie. She was waiting. Waiting for a sign, a reply, a moment where the silence would shatter and John would say something, anything, to let her back in. She sent messages once a week, nothing dramatic, just quiet check-ins. Hope you're eating well. I walked past that old ramen place today. You said London was cold, I knitted you something. No replies. She visited his office 4 times. The first time, the receptionist remembered her, offered a tight smile, said John was unavailable. The second time, they didn't let her past the lobby. The third time, she waited outside the building for nearly 3 hours, watching each person walk out, heart leaping every time a dark-suited figure passed. But John never showed. The fourth time, she brought a wrapped box, inside, the pen, the note, a photo of them from graduation, him looking down at her, her laughing like the world belonged to them. She left it with security. No message came. Sophia stopped going after that. She started skipping work events, then work meetings, then work altogether. People noticed. Her co-workers whispered, her manager grew distant. Even Ryan, still lingering around her orbit, pulled away when he realized her eyes weren't following him anymore. She had stopped looking at everyone, except the past. She visited her old university once, sat outside the auditorium where John had defended his thesis. She remembered how he stuttered on his opening sentence, then caught himself. How she had squeezed his hand afterward and whispered, I knew you'd ace it. He had smiled like she was the only audience that mattered. Now she couldn't remember the last time someone smiled at her that way. She stopped drawing, stopped writing, stopped choosing earrings in the morning. Her mirror became a place she passed, not a place she stood. The apartment stayed dark, even during the day. Meanwhile, John was flying. Not literally, not yet, but emotionally, mentally, he was breathing again. His evenings were filled with real laughter now. His new team in the London office was smaller, warmer. The city had welcomed him like an old friend. He learned to cook more than just the porridge she loved. He read poetry again, not because it reminded him of her, but because it finally didn't. He had drinks with colleagues, took long walks through Hyde Park. Once, he helped an elderly couple move their luggage into a cab and didn't even think of Sophia. Peace had become his default, not rage, not revenge, just peace. He didn't block her number, didn't report her emails. He just didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but because the conversation had already ended. Some chapters don't need to slam shut, they just fade. But one final encounter waited. At the airport. He was scheduled to fly to Zurich, a connector to London. As he walked through the departure terminal, backpack slung over one shoulder, passport tucked into his coat, he froze. Because across the hall, curled in a cafe corner seat, knees drawn up, staring out the window, was Sophia. She looked different. Her hair was uncombed, her coat slightly too thin, her eyes, once sharp with ambition, were now dim, hollow, but it was her. She looked up, saw him, and didn't move, just blinked, slowly. He approached quietly. She didn't speak. He didn't sit. He just reached into his satchel and pulled out a folded paper towel. It looked plain. She held it slowly, confused. She opened it. Inside, handwritten, healing porridge, 1/2 cup jasmine rice, 1 slice fresh ginger, 1 teaspoon sesame oil, 1 egg, chopped scallions, salt to taste, cook on low. Stir often. Don't rush. She stared. He waited. She looked up at him, eyes watery. He spoke, softly. It helped me breathe when I couldn't. She nodded. Understood. The porridge wasn't a message of hope, it was a farewell, a kindness, a soft, final gesture. He wasn't offering love. He was offering closure. Sophia blinked fast. Do you still hate me? John shook his head. I never did. Tears slipped silently down her cheek. He leaned slightly closer. You taught me how to be strong, he said, by showing me what I was willing to survive. She didn't respond, didn't beg, didn't reach out, she just lowered her eyes, and nodded. He turned, walked away. Boarding pass ready, gate open. Behind him, she sat with the paper in her hand, still trembling. For the first time, she didn't chase him. Didn't imagine a return. She knew. This was the ending. The real one. Not a door slammed shut, but a recipe folded gently into her palm. Kindness, not love. The line at the boarding gate moved slowly, a gentle crawl of tired travelers, and quiet announcements echoing above. John stood near the back, one hand gripping his passport, the other in his coat pocket, fingers brushing the familiar ridges of the boarding pass like a subconscious tether. His headphones played something soft, instrumental, string-heavy, undistracting, but his mind wasn't on the music. It drifted, not toward work, not toward the seat assignment or the flight path, but to a day long buried in the folds of memory. He was 17, she was 16. They had taken the bus to the coast just after midterms, skipped their part-time shifts, shared a sandwich and a strawberry soda. Sophia had twirled barefoot across the rocks, arms out like wings, laughing about how cold the water was. John had stayed behind, shoes still on, sketching patterns in the sand with a stick. And then, at some point, she had turned, pointed upward at a passing plane, high and far. One day, she grinned, we'll see the world together. He had nodded. Not because he believed it, but because, in that moment, he would have followed her anywhere. Now, the speaker pinged, and the gate attendant waved him forward. John stepped ahead. No fear, no ache, no looking back toward the terminal, where somewhere, not far behind, Sophia sat with a healing recipe and the silence they'd built together. This wasn't bitterness, it was breath, a gentle knowing. He reached the aircraft door, eyes catching the reflection in the window glass. A slightly older man, but lighter. He took his seat by the window, settled in, closed his eyes. And for a fleeting second, he imagined himself again, years younger, still on that beach. still pointing at the sky with her, still dreaming aloud. One day we'll see the world together. But today, he boarded that dream alone, and for the first time, he smiled. Because sometimes the real freedom is found not in where you're going, but in the quiet that follows, after goodbye.